This
through
conference will now be recorded.
just to take you through our housekeeping rules or rules of engagement. All the members that are attending the webinar, I will put you on mute, and then we'll unmute you when you are supposed to give your comment or your contribution towards the topic that you are discussing. And then secondly, also this webinar will be recorded, and then later on you'll have access to the recording of the webinar so that the conversation can continue beyond today, because we only have an hour, so we want the conversation to continue in terms of us planning Evidence 2020. And then the next step I will take you through the agenda for this webinar. What we are planning is just to do sort of a normal welcoming to the webinar, and also briefly introduce you to AEN, as we always share with you, and also introduce the session for the day. And then after that, we are going to just have a discussion, all of us as members, in terms of what is your experience of online conferences, your worst and your best. Please engage with us in that. And then I'll give Carina an opportunity to present her slides, because she's prepared very fancy and snazzy slides. She's going to be sharing the lessons and the platform examples for online conferencing or online engagement, because that's the area of interest to AEN. So we'd like to hear your inputs around that also, because we want to be able to meet your needs as our members, because you are the audience. We're doing this for you so that you benefit in terms of what you are doing. And then lastly, we'll have an open discussion, because we want to hear your views in terms of the topic that we are discussing. And also, just to share with you, we have version 1 concept note for Evidence 2020 that is online. So you also, maybe after this webinar, you'll have an opportunity to go and look at it also, and also see what we've collated, because we've been soliciting inputs using different platforms for us to make sure that we improve how we deliver, or what the experience that we are going to give you on Evidence 2020. So I think that's the agenda for today. So that's how we've structured the agenda today. So I think, having said all of that, I think we can just start from the first item, just to say, as AEN, we welcome you again, because we appreciate the fact that you've been joining us. This is our 5th webinar, and you've been constantly joining our webinars, participating and sharing your inputs and your experiences with us. These webinars are Africa Evidence series that we introduced in 2018, just after Evidence 2018, because AEN is a broad community of more than 2,000 individuals that are from, diverse backgrounds, diverse sectors across the continent. And it's important for us to see how we best engage or meet the needs of all these diverse members who are from across sectors. And also, we want to ensure that in every piece of work that we do as AEN, we continue to raise the profile of Africa in relation to evidence-informed decision-making across the continent, because that is something that we are passionate about. That is something that is important to us. And also, as a network, we're really we're responsive to the needs, and also we are aware of the fact that there are other people doing similar work that we are doing. That is why it's important for us to constantly consult with different people and solicit their inputs in terms of what are their experiences, what are the lessons that you've learned in doing different aspects of your work. And also, we want to make sure that our network is very member-driven. So inputs from our members is really important. So that is why I thought this is a good background in terms of who AEN is and why we started this particular series. And the topic of interest now is Evidence 2020. Just to give you a bit of background around that, just after Evidence 2018, which was in September 2018, in October, we started a series of consultation sessions to make sure that we get inputs in terms of what people enjoyed the most during Evidence 2018, things that we need to carry over to Evidence 2018. So through those conversations since October last year, we've put together the concept note that I've alluded to earlier on, that also includes the online part of the conference. But we haven't engaged much in terms of the online conference. So today is that opportunity that you share with us also. What are your experiences? What have you learned around attending online events? What should we avoid? What are the pitfalls around that? That would be great for you to share with us, because we want to give you the best experience in 2020. I think that was sort of me trying to give context and a bit of background in terms of this particular program. So let's move on to the next part of our agenda. Let me allow Carina to share with you some of the lessons and platform examples for online conferencing. And then after that, we'll have an opportunity as participants in this webinar. Over to you, Carina.
Thanks a lot, Sisiwe. Just getting our slide ready. Thank you all for coming. And I'm assuming you get as excited as I do about engaging online. So I want to share some thinking that we currently have around how we can make sure that we enhance engagement online for our Evidence 2020, which will be in Kampala. So I was wondering if we maybe can start off by doing some engagement. So you will note that you have a little chat box on the, what's this, far on your right bottom. There's a little chat box where you can type. And I want to ask you a question, and I want you to type your response in that box. I don't want justifications or reasons. I simply want you to type. So my question for you is, if you think of online conferences, and whether you've attended or not, just when you think of them, what season do you associate with online conferences? Don't give me a reason, just say, is online conferences winter, spring, summer, fall? What is online conferences for you? If you could type there in the chat box. If you think of online conferences. Okay, I'm looking out for your types. Are we not? Aha, there we're starting to see. Cool. Natalie is in summer. Ruth is spring. Anyone else? Sorry. I'm just sorting sound. Let's see what other seasons do we have? We have no specific season. Any other seasons? Charity, Lawrence, type in the boxes. Let's see what are your seasons when you think of online conferences. Lekwa, I think I saw your name there. Nkuli, you still here? Do you want to type for us in your chat box? What season is online conferences for you? So at the moment, no one is saying winter. So I'm assuming you associate winter with cold and not fun. If we're from Africa, that's what we think. So hopefully, if I can deduce from that, then you don't have too negative and too bad feelings about online conferences. Let me get going. So if we can, I think the whole idea of what we were thinking of, sorry, we're just trying to move our slides again. We were thinking, if we are together in a conference, what is the most that we can get out of that when we're together, whether it is for us as an individual or whether it is for the AEN as a collective. And whether we're joining online or whether we're joining face-to-face, we want to ensure that when we're together for Evidence 2020, we really make the most of that opportunity of being in a same space, physical or virtual, for a very particular, for real time. Now, conventionally, conferences and conference approaches are that you do presentations, you have some forms of managed discussions, you might even have open discussions, you might have brainstorming sessions, and if you think of if I think of some of the online conferences I've attended, you might watch a live stream, or you might tweet, or you might, take part in a online discussion forum. And there's not to say anything wrong with those, but we're trying to think, but what more can we do to really make the most? And specifically, our idea for today is to make sure what is the most that we can get out in enhancing our engagements and connections with one another. Now, so Siva earlier referred to the Evidence 2020 conference concept note. If you've not seen it yet, there's a QR code you can grab. If you have a QR reader on your phone, you can grab that. Otherwise, there is the link that should take you to our website where that conference note is. And I specifically want to take out one of the points in our concept note for the conference that says Evidence 2020 will use technology in new and exciting ways to enable virtual participation, reducing our carbon footprint and increasing the inclusivity of our event. And that's really what our aim with the online conference part of 2020 will be. And part of what we're starting to think of now is, but how can we do that? And that's why we have the webinar today, is to share with you some of our early ideas and to really, if you want, brainstorm with you, think with you about what those potentially could be. Now, I think if we talk about engaging at a conference, why would we want engagement at a conference? And maybe this picture is very truthful. It's not. It is a. Maybe that's typically how conferences are. In some cases, very white, very male, but they're also very typical of conferences in terms that you might find someone sitting talking on a phone, someone else talking to another, being very interested, quite likely in not necessarily tweeting about the conference, but maybe what's going on in our Facebook or doing a document that we do. And it's typically because our approach many times in conferences is that we're expecting the sage on the stage, the expert, to provide information. So it's a very passive listening. And what we want to rather do with our conference is have much more active engagement and learning. Now, of course, it's not only in conferences. In online conferences, you can also be doing 120 other things and not engaging. And if I think of how I sometimes engage in online conferences, because it's very similar, I'm just listening to someone and not having to engage. You typically do all sorts of other stuff rather than engage. And of course, there's always the danger around conferences. And I think it's the danger if you only have a very passive listening, is that our attention spans are so long and we easily can get bored. And the moment, specifically in online environment, it's really easy for me to think people are still present in the online conference, and actually you've gone and made some tea and come back 10 minutes later and you've I still think you're all present and there. So really we don't want those kinds of scenarios for our Evidence 2020. I think another reason why it's important to think of engagement in our online stuff is that the nature of the topic of what we do, evidence-informed decision-making in Africa, is really a topic that we need a conference style that fits that topic. And I thought this diagram very handy to think of, when you deal with easy or time issues, supplying information is fine. But the moment you start to get to messy and more wicked issues, which is what evidence-informed decision-making in Africa is about, you really need to have styles that allows for connections between people and that facilitate joint sense making. And I think those top two levels really are what we're hoping to achieve with the online part from an AEN perspective. with Evidence 2020. I think from an individual's perspective, for me, many times I attend conferences for my own learning purpose and for my own professional development. And engagement, to learn at those things, I have to engage. That's the first step of learning. And I think what we're hoping to enhance in Evidence 2020 is the social learning that comes through engagement. That is not just an individual, but as a collective, as the AEN, that we will be able to learn together. And another way to look at the same kind of thing, we really want to shift from the AEN sharing a common interest, enhancing our interactions all the way through where we have emotional connections with one another, because emotional connections are the things that's going to enhance real collaborations, and that we're not just passive members of an organization, but active engagers, really learning and drawing on one another to achieve what we want to with evidence-informed decision-making in Africa. I think another slide, it's after the same thing. Conferences typically, whether online or face-to-face, is really many times about the informed, the unidirectional. We really want to shift with Evidence 2020, and specifically online, we really want to shift way more to involve, collaborate, and empower in the things that we do. I think the big things that we want to talk about is how do we connect, how do we converse, and how do we collaborate if we're online. I think the idea, and I think engagement comes from if you have a sense that you're present, you're there, you recognize, you're seen. And if it's real time, because there's an immediate reaction. It's not asynchronous that someone posts and 2 hours later I post and I have to wait 4 hours again for that person to reply back. So what we're wanting to achieve with the online conference is to have the sense that it is as if you are at a face-to-face meeting. It's as if you are physically present. You can engage and you can raise and you can learn and you can network and you collaborate, and we can produce as if we were physically present. I think another way, it's all after the same kind of idea of how, whether through information or through action or through knowledge we create, what are the various kinds of, this diagram indicates, what are the various kinds of, if you want, methodologies, tools, activities we can possibly think of to engage. And it's really interesting, these lists are typical stuff that people think more and more for alternative conferences, physical ones, but there's some really interesting things happening with how we can do these things in an online space as well, and that's what we're really hoping to look at. A really interesting organization for me, or website, is called Liberating Structures. And they really look at, but outside of all our conventional ways of engaging and enhancing participation, what are other methodologies, other tools that can be used? And the diagram, their menu here is a list of 30 activities that they say one can use to enhance engagement. And I mean, the original focus is strongly on face-to-face, but I think all of these are possible things that one can explore for online as well. So what I want to do is just grab a few ideas around how we can enhance our online conference. So the one thing would be is to think of, well, if you're not going to be physically in Uganda in September 2020, yes, and you're going to be online, but how can you also be physical? And here I'm thinking of ideas like hubs. Why can't we have in various, whether it's organizations, whether it's cities through Africa, whether it's universities, have people volunteering, doing little hubs where a group of us come together, you know, in whatever city, and Abidjan, since we were just there, some of us, and we engage from a space together where some of us is physical and we engage from the online. And as you'll see later, those are possible ways in which we can overcome some of the challenges we face in Africa with our internet access, stability, and cost of data. So there's one thing to think of: how can we create hubs that can be physical spaces that's not in Uganda and then connect online. There's all sorts of interesting things of how you can do real-time polling. And this is some ideas to bring the physical and the online together in one space. this specific example I'm using is a recent inaugural lecture of a professor where he had people through this real-time polling indicate, because typically what you do in real-time polling, you ask a particular question, you use an app or a website to get responses from people, and you have real-time immediate responses that you can show for people. So you get a sense of where people are and what they're thinking and feeling. And so this was his way to show, and it's a very limited way, but it is some way already of getting people to engage. So he asked people where they were watching from. Later on in his presentation, he asked, "But what does open and open university mean for you?" And people's responses were immediately put in a word cloud. So these are some of the one of the things we could try and look. There's really interesting things about interactive screens more and more, whether we looking at a physical presentation from Uganda, or whether it's an online presentation that people in Uganda watch. So there's really interesting things around interactive screens, where the screen that you have becomes a thing that anyone that's online can engage with. This is an example where Blackboard Collaborate was used in a recent course by Bonnie Stewart, where she asked people about where have you seen or felt exclusion, and people could type in, or you can see people could also use their fingers to indicate all sorts of ways. Again, a way of trying to enhance immediate interaction and engagement. There's all sorts of possibilities for online brainstorming. It specifically, I think, works well for smaller groups. So I think, as you'll see in the concept note, part of our idea of building up towards Evidence 2020, I think doing something like various brainstorming activities in smaller groups around particularly some of the streams that we're thinking of. And I think at the moment our two priority issues have been the evidence capacities work stream, and one on the arts and science of evidence use in Africa. And as we were told at the previous webinar, we invited to share more of what is our priority issues, and those could really become, we could use those themes to start to think of, get people together in smaller groups that have an interest in those, and how can they, through various kinds of applications, and we all know probably Google Doc is probably the easiest of all these, various others as well, how can we start to engage one another? Another one is this idea of concept noting, and I was specifically thinking about this at the previous AEN webinar a month ago. One of you raised the question about, but shouldn't we be discussing, and one of the things, shouldn't we get some agreement on what does evidence mean? And there's various applications and tools for how can we map out what is the meaning of evidence for AEN, and we can do that again in smaller groups, build up, prepare a document that can serve at Kampala, physical and online, and we can access beforehand and engage with and work on. Then, of course, there is the online sticky notes, which comes in, I think that's the one I was looking for. We kind of all know when we're in a physical space how hectic a wall can very quickly look if we start to throw ideas down. But again, lots of possible tools to allow for online engagement on expressing ideas, and whether it is for a concept, whether it's for feelings, whether it's to be reflective, whether it's to you can vote on the nice sticky notes, specifically the online ones. As you put them up, you can organize them in various ways. People can vote on how we organize them, and we'll see at the end. One of these I will try out today. I was thinking of low risk things for today. And then, of course, there is something like digital storytelling, which I think quite a few of us are really excited about. Now, stories, of course, if a quote that I know of someone that says stories are our most natural form of thinking. And stories is also a way to engage us as if we were there. Stories has this ability to get all our senses going and make us feel to be there. And whether you can combine oral with various visual and sound and digital media to create these stories. And again, people can record, whether audio or visual, yourself or a group of people, before, during, or after the conference on various topics or themes of of what evidence mean and what are our priority areas for the AEN, or priority issues for the AEN. And I think it is it's probably, I think, where the science and the art also come together in forms of expression and enhancing not only our own engagement of the ones that's telling the story, but also the person listening on the other side. And I think that's probably another element of the online that I think we really want to enhance, is this idea of different ways, that it's not just oral or just in text form, but other ways. Here's a recent idea of a little cartoon of how that was done about what is digital storytelling. And I think one of the things that I take from here is the strength of storytelling, that it's about meaning making. And if you think of what we said earlier, that's where that idea of shared meaning, of that's really what we want to be able to do in the AEN together. And I think that, so there's all sorts of amazing, whether you do it through podcasts or slideshows like Prezi, or animations or videos, and most of our smartphones these days are snazzy enough to, or good enough to do good quality engagement on those kind of things. And then I think the last idea that I quickly want to share as possibilities is this idea of having online and physical conversations. And I specifically want to refer, so this is an example of a tool called V-Connecting, which basically uses the idea of fishbowl discussions, which most of you might know. Fishbowl ideas is that you have right in the middle a panel of people that have pre-prepared things on a particular topic to say. Around them, in that space, they have people that then listen. And as the discussion goes, you're allowed to go from the outside of the fishbowl to go sit in the middle and engage in the discussion and move back and forth. And what VConnect has done is they use the same kind of idea, but has developed that for online. And Mala Bali, who you see there, is one of the directors of VConnecting. So here's a case of, this is what I will see when I look at my screen. So I'll see the person speaking. You'll see underneath her name is typically limited about up to 8 people that is also connecting online. There's chat abilities for me to just, as on the outer side of the fishbowl, if you want, I'm observing, I'm watching the live stream, and I can engage in the discussion forum. I think that's very similar. And then at the physical conference itself, you have either speakers or participants or a mixture of them that actually engages online with it. So you're bringing the physical and the online together in a space. And I've now attended a few of these V-Connecting sessions, and the amazing of them is that they actually, they really make you feel as if you're there, because you just watch this speaker online talking, and the next moment you're in a conversation with them online, and there's amazing rich discussions typically. And I think the big thing of these kinds of things is to foreground conversation and background presentation. And I think that's in a way what we're hoping to achieve with Evidence 2020. That it's not really about presentations and people in front speaking all sorts of stuff, but it really is about us talking and engaging with one another, and hoping the fishbowl ideas will maybe inspire all of us to be all sorts of creative ideas. Of course, there's all sorts of things to think of if we want to do that, and we have to consider our context when we talk online. I think one of the challenges that we face when we want to engage online, even face-to-face, for us in the AEN, is issue of language. How can we make meaning together if we talk different languages and don't understand the language that someone talks to me? So I think there's a whole lot of work, and I know both for the physical conference, but also for the online conference. And I think that's probably where we would love to hear some of your ideas of how do we at least make the AEN bilingual, and specifically in our online environment, to ensure that everyone has an ability to engage and to be heard. And probably with that is linked not just then language as a barrier for engagement, but the reality of the cost of data and the internet and having it, and the reliability of internet connection. So there's a whole lot of things that we will have to be conscious to think of. How can we make sure that the tools and the things we use for our online conference are data light, that they don't chew into people's data, so there's a whole lot of things just to, I think, to think in terms of that, of social justice. And then I think the last thing to think of is, from my side really, is that, you know, this diagram is this typical idea of how people adapt to technology. You always have early adapters, followers, and then there's always late adapters and laggards that come way later, and that would be slow in uptake. So what can we do? You know, if we want to do all of these really exciting stuff with the online conference that's different, and get people to really engage and be part and be present in the conference, and enhancing conversations and collaborations, what is it that we, from the AN Secretariat side, what is it that we should be doing to make sure that people are ready to be able to engage in this way online? Because, I mean, we know there's a few of us that's a little bit hesitant about the technologies and how to do it. I feel like my mother, she's always worried she's going to break something. She's going to break the whole internet if she pressed the button. And I think for me, probably the biggest thing in all of this is that we view enhancing engagement as a process. It's not going to be a once-off event. And we likely will have to do small little step initially, and hopefully learn in that process. Okay, I think that's what I wanted to say, Sisiwe, except maybe the last thing, before I hand over to Sisiwe, there is whether you want to grab the QR code or there is the link. It's one of these applications that can enhance online engagement. So it takes you to a place where you can give feedback on today's webinar. And you'll see there's 3 columns on that. It basically asks you, what are you glad about, what are you sad about, and what are you mad about? Hopefully we've made no one mad, Sisiwe.
Okay. Thank you very much, Carina, for that interesting and exciting presentation. I hope we have excited the delegates of this webinar today to engage with us in terms of how do you want us to shape the Evidence 2020 online. But just to reiterate some of the things, basically Evidence 2020, we aim to foster collaborations. That is really important to us. And also we want to facilitate dialogue and move forward some of the debates to advance the use of evidence decision-making across the continent. So that is why we're looking at what are the platforms that are user-friendly for us to be able to use to make sure that we foster these collaborations. And also, over the years for our conference, we're able to sort of attract the most diverse delegates. You know, we'll have civil society, government, academia, spanning from all different types of evidence. So for us to be able to cater for such audience of that diverse nature, we need to be able to speak to the audience itself, to say, how do we make the experience better? How do we make the experience enjoyable for you? And so that you can be able to learn something out of this. So at this moment, I would take this opportunity to give for open discussion. So you can unmute, as an audience, you can unmute your speaker if you want to put in a comment or a question. So this is an opportunity for us to engage. What is the best way for us to make sure that the online conference that we are going to be hosting, meet your needs? What is the best way to go about that? We would like to hear your inputs currently. So you can unmute your...
Hello?
Hello, please go ahead.
I just have one idea. I mean, I heard the presentation is good, but I believe that, I mean, online conferencing should be a supplement, or it should be an additional besides the permanent or ordinary use of conducting conferences, because I don't think that, I mean, there are issues with managing online conferencing. There are also issues of like, for example, the participant might not have enough time, they might not have enough attention, they might not give enough attention to online things. So I suggest you should consider it as a supplement, not as a main way of communicating conferences. So that should be, I mean, how do you see this point?
I think, is it Philmon? Yeah, I think our last conference, Evidence 2018, very much had that approach where our physical conference was the main event and the online part was supplementary. Or in a way, I should probably say differently. We drew from the physical conference to, in a way, run parallel to that an online conference, so that the content of the online was mainly generated by the physical conference. I think and it's my views on that is that I think there's way more exciting stuff, and I don't think our approach is in any way to detract from the physical conference. The physical conference will happen. And it has, in terms of that, there's all sorts of amazing, new, exciting things of what's going to happen there. So that will definitely be the event. I think our idea is to make the online a strong event in itself that can generate its own content, and that some of that content can come into the physical, and that again, some of the physical will go online, but in a way that you have a proper hybrid event that allows for everyone to take part, whether they're there or not. And their way of engaging might be in different ways, but that we just have different avenues for all of our members to engage, that it's not a costly thing, because I think cost is definitely a factor for a lot of people to be able to travel. And then I think more and more we also have this awareness in the context of the Anthropocene that we live in, that we have to think of ways of engaging that does not involve traveling thousands of kilometers to reduce our carbon footprint. And I think so that's part of why we're thinking, how do we enhance the online component for real engagement, that it actually contributes in that way as well.
Thank you, Carina. Anyone else who has input, please unmute your speaker, then you can give your input.
Yes, good afternoon all. I'm Ida from Kenya. Yeah, and at least the online has enabled me now to attend the webinar, just like many others. For me, I want to say online conferences are very good, I would say so, because definitely the money issue, the time issue, maybe the job and the rest would prevent some people who would want to attend a conference and would want to participate from participating. Now, to enhance online, one way would be to at least for the presenters to remember there are people online that many a times are forgotten, at least to pose a question and expect an answer, or to look at the answers being given back by the online people, the online participants. Then another thing also is allowing a little bit of the camera from the presenter to be seen by the participants, so that they can engage more and they can be visible, they can feel they are there. Otherwise, when they can't see the person presenting, at least even if it's just for a short while when it's beginning, then from there they can continue. So a camera and engagement with a question or a suggestion, and following the answers given. So that would be one way I would contribute. Thank you.
Ada, thank you very much for welcome to our webinar. So it gave you an opportunity to join us. Anyone else who would like to give his input? Enoch, go ahead.
How are you?
Good, and you, please go ahead.
Fine, thank you. This is Enoch. I'm currently in London, but I'm from Zimbabwe. I would like to appreciate the ongoing efforts by Africa Evidence Network in terms of trying to reach as many participants as possible through the online conference. I think, as Philemon had said, maybe if it is going to be running concurrent with the main conference, I think it is a very noble idea, because it allows greater reach and it also promotes visibility of the network to other international delegates or international stakeholders who will be interested in following our conferences in Africa. And it is good marketing and promoting the network name. I think we need to keep with that, as long as it's going to be running concurrent with the physical conference. I think it's a very good idea and we support that. The other thing is, in terms of the tools that has been shared, I admire the tools. There's so many tools, but probably if in the next newsletter or magazine that you share, if we can have the links, or if there are no restrictions to access them and test the various tools, I think they can also be beneficial in different platforms, even in our workplaces, in our other study group discussions, or even to try and utilize them. I think technology is the way to go. We are probably adopting it a bit late because of other factors like costs and infrastructure, but that's the way to go. At the end of the day, we need to be going online. Otherwise, thank you and keep it up in terms of this webinar. They will keep us in touch and connected. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just to say that this webinar is being recorded, so the video will be uploaded and the presentation online, because after this webinar we still want people to engage with us and give more comments. Maybe sometimes you haven't thought of something, you think about it later after the webinar. So you still have an opportunity to give us your feedback and your inputs, because also we want to have an opportunity also to refine the content note based on the inputs that we're receiving from you, because we've done the version 1. So version 2 should be the revision in terms of the inputs that we are getting from our members. Thank you very much. I see, Christine, you've unmuted yourself. Please go ahead with your input or comment. Christine? Okay. Anyone else who would like to give input, or can I give Carina just an opportunity to answer some of the questions that are coming through the chat, because we're having some people engaging with us through using the chat.
Siziwe, it's Ruth here. I just have one additional point that I don't think has been mentioned yet, and it's around visas, because we've had some real disappointments in the last month where colleagues from across Africa who are really excited to be part of evidence events have had their visas rejected and not been able to take part. And I think we probably need to take this seriously going forwards and think about partly how we can support people who want to attend in person so their visa applications are not rejected, but also how we can include people in these virtual virtual events to try and overcome some of those barriers. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment. Let us just address a few questions that are coming from the chat, and then I'll go back to the audience again.
Okay. So one of the questions from the chat, Natalie, what are the chances of having a French presenter featuring French interviews? Does that mean, Natalie, you volunteering for some French lessons? I hope that means. No, I think it's the kind of things we will have to think of and engage. And we have a number of French-speaking members. And I think from the Secretariat side, it is, and I think recently with the vacancy that's been filled on the AEN Advisory Board, we have a West African representative on the board again. And I think those are exactly the kind of things we need to engage on. How do we draw on our members to engage with one another, and whether it is through allowing a French presenter or French interviews, or whether it is, thinking of how can we do translations, whether it's at the conference, whether it's an online stuff. I know, for example, in classes, I'm also a lecturer at UJ, and one of the interesting things is if you allow students that work in groups to allow them to speak in mother tongue, as long as there's someone that can translate to others in a group. And and it's not something that we've done first time at UJ. It comes from research elsewhere in the world that shows the tremendous enhancement of engagement when people are able to communicate in languages that they're comfortable with, and then it's finding the means of how do we communicate it with one another. And whether that's going to need to mean, consciously from the AN Secretariat finding and pulling in our French-speaking members way more, I think is probably going to be part of that we're going to need to do. I quickly wanted to just also say on Enoch about the tools. I'm more than happy that we can update. I don't have many of them on the slides, but I have lists and lists of them. And I'm happy that we maybe put that as an addendum to the end of the slides when we share, that people can see what are those possible ones. There's another question. Is there some way to facilitate questions from viewers into the interviews? Again, that's definitely something. If people, that means when people are online, and if we think of what we had at Evidence 2018, and there's a studio where interviews are happening, or even if you have a roaming camera, is there ways in which you can bring online people into those interviews? There's definitely, again, and it all depends on what platform you use and how you set that up. But nothing stops us from using GoToMeeting or various others, or Zoom. There's lots of them, or Blackboard Collaborate, which we have access to bring in people and participants elsewhere in Africa and bring them and bring the interviews and their voices real time into an online situation or into the conference itself. Is definitely possibilities. I think, as with all these things, it is the reality of our context of cost and bandwidth.
Okay, thank you, Carina. Just to say, in terms of the French speaking members of AEN, I think we started a process also already with Evidence 2018 when we had a workshop, and then when we went to Africa as well, we shared a stand with WASI, who is the French-speaking network in West Africa. So AEN is taking some steps to see how we best engage the French-speaking members of AEN. So that's basically where we've started. We are trying to make sure that we do something about this particular request. Thank you very much. So let's give members also an opportunity to engage, because we've responded to all the questions that were on the chat. Anyone else, please unmute yourself if you have a question or a comment, so that we can give you the platform to share your inputs.
Hello?
Hello, please go ahead.
I just want to add some things on what Christine just mentioned. Like you mentioned that there were problems with visa applications, and also, I mean, now we are going to have another one after a few months. So, are you taking note of this for the coming event also? And secondly, I mean, is there a way for you now, at least, are you preparing or are you thinking to find sponsors, at least to invite some of the reference group members for Evidence 2020? Are you facilitating this? Thank you.
Thank you, Philemon, for that question. I think because we're having our reference group meeting in June, so I think that is an opportunity for that particular governance structure of the AEN to strategize on what is the best way to involve the reference group members. So based on whatever we've discussed and agreed, that's what we would be planning and implementing. And then related to issues around visas, I think because our members are from different countries, I think we need to find a way to figure out what is the best way to support individuals from different countries who had their visas declined for Evidence 2018, and look into what is needed for the visa to be a success so that a member can be able to attend. So that's some of the issues that the AEN is asking itself, because we don't want someone who is willing and interested to come to our event and be prevented by a visa process that we didn't take into account and into consideration. So we're willing to learn, we're willing to understand what are the requirements for visa applications for different individuals coming from different countries who want to be part of Evidence 2020. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to give their input? We are only left with 8 minutes, so let's use this 8 minutes to share our experiences also and your lessons, because I'm sure some of you have attended online events. What should we avoid? What should we introduce and implement for our conference?
Hello.
Hello. Go ahead, Enoch.
I just have a few parting words to say. You guys are doing a wonderful job. I think when you look at when the network started, how it has grown, a lot of demands and challenges. I think in June it will be an opportunity for the reference group and the leadership to really strategize and see how can the network respond to the growing demand. And because of ongoing interest from different stakeholders and the networks and groups, I think I see the network going to grow further and further, and there's need for a strategic, proactive response from the leadership and the members to see how best can the network be prepared to address and respond to the needs. But we have really done very well. The network is growing and is going to continue to grow. I just want to say, keep it up, and you are doing a wonderful job.
You know, I see Ada, you are back. Please continue.
Okay. Yes. Okay. In addition to what Enoch has said, I think also because of the good work you've done, let it be also a teaching to others. At least you document the process you've undertaken, so that when others are starting or catching up, they can be able to know what to avoid, what best practices to copy from you, and the strong areas, just to show that, to have that memory, institutional memory, which will be teaching others, because that's the essence of it all. We monitor ourselves, but also we pass on the good to others. Otherwise, very good work done. Thank you.
As you talk now, I remembered I wanted to respond to a comment you made earlier about, how one needs to remind presenters of that there's an online audience as well. And I think if I think of the feedback from Evidence 2018, I think specifically from the online audience, that was one of the things that we got as a very positive. And I think that's things we will enhance in 2020 as well. Is we basically have, we called them online hosts who sat in the physical conference in the audience, and they were made known to the presenters beforehand. And so they were also given, when there were questions and answers, they were also, the online hosts were also asked to bring the questions or comments from the online discussion into the physical conference. And if I remember right, that was a really, number of the online participants commented about the value of being recognized by a speaker, or even if a speaker just starts by greeting and, thank you for all being here and thank you for all the online participants. It's acknowledging that you're there in your voice and enhancing. It's likely that your engagement will be enhanced if you're recognized. So thank you for reminding us of that.
Thank you very much, Karina. I think this is very exciting. I'm really, really excited right now about the online possibilities, because that's what it's about. It's about what are the possibilities that are available for us as AEN to be able to engage with our members in the best ways that we can. And I think what is important about AEN also is the fact that we are, ready to employ different innovative approaches and learn from our members and, try new things all the time, because we want to ensure that we respond to you appropriately. And most importantly, I think we want to give our members and our delegates the best experience. We want you to talk about our conference for even between the gap year, 2019, 2021, so that you are really looking forward to meeting us in 2 years' time. So we want to give you the best experience, and we are so excited that you're giving us your inputs in this particular manner, and you're showing excitement as well in terms of the work that we do. And I think we pride ourselves in the fact that we consult our members to make sure that we sort of respond to your actual needs as our members. So that is really important for us to use these particular platforms to be able to communicate with our members, to consult, solicit inputs. So thank you very much for really being active participants in the process of growing AEN, because without the members, AEN will not grow. So without us listening to your voices, without us being member-driven, we will not grow as a network. And we are really grateful and thankful to your inputs that you give us on an ongoing basis. So we have like 2 minutes left. If there's anyone who feels that they need to give us their inputs right now, they can also unmute themselves and share with us your inputs in the remaining 2 minutes, or after the webinar also, there's that opportunity. Please share with us. Anyone who needs to share anything? Okay, all right. I was just looking at there's one chat that says, is there a way members can continue to send feedback to AEN Secretariat on this particular topic? So I think because we haven't received anyone who wants to talk right now, I think one of the things that we're going to do, we're going to upload the video as I indicated earlier, and the presentation and some of the links that Karina has indicated, and then the concept note is uploaded on our website. It's available, version 1, for members to use. And then also, if you want to send comments, please send them at ace@uj.ac.za. So we'll welcome your emails into that particular email address. So please continue the conversation with us. We are really looking forward to hearing more of your ideas.
Cecilia, I was just thinking maybe one of the things we can also think of is to start to look at some of these tools that we were mentioning. Something like a Padlet could really easily be, if we create a wall for Padlet or a sticky note or whatever, that could be a place where we permanently have anyone that has ideas for either the online or the physical conference, go stick your stuff there. You can engage with others. We can start organizing stuff. So we could actually start using some of the tools we were talking about.
Great. I think that will be great. We sort of start testing what we are talking about with you members. Is there anyone who also want to give a comment before I sort of wrap up the webinar? Okay. In the absence of comments, again, I think as AEN would like to thank you very much for participating in our webinars, in our events, and also, sharing your experiences freely with us. We really appreciate your inputs. So all of these inputs that we got from you today, and on an ongoing basis, as we've indicated, we're going to revise and refine our concept note so that it reflects some of the inputs that you've given us. And also we'll have an opportunity to test some of these platforms to make sure that we continue the conversations with you members. On that note, thank you very much for attending. We are very grateful, and we are closing the webinar.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Goodbye from Johannesburg. Goodbye from the AEN. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye. Thank you.
Bye. We waving.